So we're delighted to have Ed Wilkinson from IE Digital here today to have a chat about the work that they do and the sector they work within. Before we start, Ed, you won't necessarily be familiar to all of our audience, so do you want to just give us a bit of an introduction to yourself and to IE Design?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rob. So Ed Wilkinson, I am IE Digital's Digital Services Director. IE is actually the digital and a brand arm, so IE Brand and Digital. And we are an agency based in the Jewellery Quarter in Birmingham. We've been around for almost 30 years. I think it's 27 or 28 years. And yeah, we work predominantly, almost exclusively, in fact, in the charity, health and education sectors. And that's a sort of a conscious focus that was sort of set out by our founder, almost 30 years ago, to work with what we call values-driven clients to make a difference. So yeah, that's where we're happiest. That's where we continue to have, I'd say over 99% of all of our clients fit into that space. We don't market to anybody else. We occasionally pick up a commercial client or two, but they're very, very few and far between these days. Yeah.
Nice. That's exactly the same as us, actually. We've set up, we do a lot, started in membership, do a lot more now in with charity fundraisers, campaign groups, arts and heritage, etc. But I would literally describe it the same. We only market we only promote our services to the sector.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
very specific.
It's funny you mentioned membership, because membership is almost like an adopted fourth sector, because obviously you get membership organizations for just about everything, just as you get charities for just about everything. So it's not a sector as such, it's obviously a type of organization. But we first started working with a sector skills council I don't know, 15 plus years ago. And ever since then, we've sort of had other member-led or volunteer-led organizations approach us, obviously all having sort of similar challenges, and we've been able to obviously find commonalities between what we did for one with what we did for another, and gradually sort of grow a portfolio of membership clients, which wasn't an intentional thing. It just sort of happened organically, because they share a lot of the same challenges. They need to connect with their members, they need to provide services to their members, it needs to be streamlined. They've often got a lot of systems in the back end, lots and lots of processes around membership and renewals and the different things that they provide for members. So it's kind of, if there was a fourth one ahead of charity, health and education, it would be membership, and that continues to be a really strong area of business for us.
Yeah, interesting, because like you say, membership can stray, can't it? People are members of gyms and golf clubs and whatever, lots of commercial, hey, Amazon Prime, I don't think, we'd call them a non-profit, right?
No, we definitely, I think Jeff Bezos, not quite what I would categorize as a not-for-profit. But
non-taxpayer maybe, but that's not quite the same.
No, absolutely, yeah. Oh, don't get me started on that. But it's mainly, so lots of professional associations, and providers of sort of CPD and training into various different sectors, tend to be the kinds of membership organizations that we work for.
Makes sense, and similar to us. So cool. Thank you. Good to have that bit of background. I guess, in a similar way, when we talk about kind of the range of organizations that you have worked with and have found yourself working with, I think from my perspective, it seems to be the same in terms of the range of services you provide and the range of kind of areas where you work with those clients. We could talk about design thinking, UX, personalisation. We could go off about apps and websites. There is almost a kind of, where do you start? Because I guess, there's, you definitely offer services around that whole group. Yeah,
we absolutely do. So I think our brand heritage, if you like, so we started off as pure brand and then picked up a digital arm, if you like, around about 20 or so years ago. So I would say the way we have always viewed projects, and the way that the sort of the sector is increasingly viewing projects, is in a more holistic sense. So we tend to say things like we help organizations, or we help charities to solve brand and communication challenges, right? And actually the solution to that could be anything. Right, so it could be changes to your brand tone of voice, could be changes to your visual identity. It might be they need to do some market research to understand who your audiences are and what makes them tick, why they seek you out, and all those kinds of things. And we then look to solve that challenge through brand deliverables and digital deliverables. So obviously I wear a digital hat. I've always been sort of the digital guy. I come from a background of web development. I've sort of moved on, pardon me, from there. So clients come to us more often than not with an overarching problem, and they're looking to us to say, okay, well, what are the best tools for us to use to solve this problem? So how can I engage with my members, but how can I grow my membership? How can we improve member retention? I've given a bunch of examples of membership organizations, but obviously charity, you've got fundraising challenges, you've got recruitment, volunteering challenges, you've got all sorts of different things. Sometimes just trying to change people's perceptions of you. So, people think of us as this old organization that, is stuck in its roots and this, that, and the other. We want to reinvent ourselves. How can we do that? How can we have people come to our website or call us up or download our app and it sort of is a thought you knew, well, think again, this is who we really are. So really lifting that mask up. And that's very much a sort of a joint brand and digital challenge. And I think we actually did a talk. It was some years ago now, pre-pandemic, around brand experiences. So obviously the brand agencies talk a lot about brand experiences. It's the sum total of a person's interactions with you and what they take away. It's what they think of you. And actually, more now than ever before, brand experiences are digital experiences. The two are sort of permanently intertwined because you've got digital just permeates every corner of modern life. So it's impossible to separate the two. So where sort of 5-10 years ago, someone might have come to us and said, I need a CRM integration, or my website's old, I think I should make a new one. It looks a bit dated. Nowadays, it's a far more sort of holistic challenge, and the sort of the interplay between all these different elements, some of which are digital and some of which aren't, is sort of key to driving the success and solving whatever challenge that might be. So it's a really interesting time to be in this line of work.
Yeah, because like you say, I mean, and it's one of the things, it's almost kind of one of the characteristics of the sector we think, which is that it's a people-based sector, isn't it? It's all about relationships, Absolutely. It's all about people. And for that reason, potentially additionally impacted by the pandemic, the move away from challenge events, a lot of that in-person stuff obviously had to get paused and suspended. So almost the move to digital, you talked about, brand experience being digital, and I get that completely. That was probably, the third sector was probably behind the private sector at that in 1919. But I think I've seen a real kind of acceleration through the sector in the last 2 years. And like you say, now people understanding that it's interesting you say it's a combination of brand and digital, which then changes that experience, because again, the sector is all about purpose, cause, and the why, isn't it? So is that what you're seeing? You're needing to use a range of tactics and strategies.
I would say that projects tend to come to us less well formed. They tend to be more, not necessarily aspirational, but it tends to be a vision, a target audience, a strategy, a set of objectives, an idea of what success looks like, and that drives the creation of new digital services, amended brand messaging, a new look and feel, different approach to social, utilizing things like new technologies like chatbots, whatever it might be. It's all driven from sort of an organizational objective or an established set of audiences, or a set of audiences' needs and a better understanding of their situation. So user-centric design is, to say it's a recent trend would be nonsense. It's not a recent trend, but it continues to be, I would say, the driving force that is pushing the sector forwards. A need to understand audiences and design experiences, be they online or offline, that speak to them, meet those needs, and really, really deliver value, because that's what users expect. You're right about the pandemic really putting a bomb under everyone effectively. It's really forced everyone's hand and said, okay, look, everyone, we used to deliver this face to face. It might be service delivery or training or whatever. We can't. And then there was a sort of a period we found that was, I guess somewhere between, April and June 2020,
Hmm.
when, everyone was kind of still naively thinking, hey, 3 weeks, it'll be gone. Be
Yeah,
gone by
yeah.
summer. We'll be grand.
Remember
Of
that.
course, yeah, indeed. And of course, that didn't happen. And then pretty soon after that period of okay, it's sunk in. This is going to be around for a while. We need to continue doing what we were doing before. So how on earth do we do that? So things sort of went quiet for a bit, and then actually things picked back up. And particularly being involved in digital, obviously you got the likes of Zoom. They
Yeah,
saw, I don't know what the percentage increase is, but everyone suddenly thought, my goodness, we still need to work. So how do we do it without being face to face?
yeah,
And charities and membership organizations did similar things. And they said, actually, this event, this training that is X percentage of our income, that we rely upon to stay functioning for our financial stability, how do we do it now?
yeah,
And how could we get that up and running as soon as possible? And that was sort of the initial need. And now we're seeing, actually, now that people can go back to being face to face, that's not the be all and end all. So there's this real hybrid approach. People saying, well, actually, this worked really, really well, and it saved us time here and it saved us money there. And actually people reported back that actually that training was better than the training they got face to face, because we had these breakout rooms and it was less clunky, or people didn't
I
have to
think.
travel or whatever it might be.
Yeah, I think what it forced people to do was to kind of rethink, actually reimagine what their
Mm,
training course would look like. Because you couldn't, we saw some people who tried to just lift and shift, just like, here's our course material,
yeah,
we'll deliver that through Zoom. And
yeah,
frankly, it fails, right? It fails dismally
mm,
because the
mm,
whole model just doesn't work.
yeah,
But
yeah,
actually, yeah, it enforced a bit of innovation. It enforced
hmm,
people to revisit the courses they'd, sculpted 5 years previous.
mm,
And then I absolutely agree with you. I think they then saw through that first year that this
mm,
was really successful. And I
mm.
don't know, it felt like coming into the second year of the pandemic that people had suddenly had a little bit of room to think and to breathe a bit, and started to get really creative, I think, in the
Yeah,
second year. And I
yeah,
think,
yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, I was going to say I completely agree with that. I think, yeah, there was a sort of a survival aspect to it
Yeah,
initially, and then it turned into, actually, there are possibilities here
yeah,
to do things better. And now that we've actually cracked the platform shift, effectively, that sort of rudimentary, it's not here anymore, it's there, and how is that different, and how do we make it work? There is the whole, how do we make it better? And this sort of, again, it ties into the whole focus on user experience, because I would say something it has done for the sector is put into focus the need for back and forth, for conversation, for interaction on anything on the web, or anything digital, really. Because it was getting to that point before the pandemic, where actually, users expect more than a brochure website. They don't want to read a online PDF. It's a website, it can do more than that, and they expect more. But since everybody's got used to interacting digitally, they are now expecting, there's a level of interaction and dialogues of back and forth between organization and service user, or potential service user, or supporter, or whoever it is, or advocate, that is sort of expected now. And people are striving to make that experience better, to closen their relationships with their users.
yeah. And I think it is that journey, isn't it? So like you say, not literally up to 2019, but over the
Mm,
last 10 years or whatever,
mm,
lots of push, the digital
yeah,
platforms just push stuff out there, use it to get
mm,
your message wider and all that
yeah,
kind of stuff, but very kind of one way, really. Development of some portals and a bit of interactivity, but then the interactivity was kind of between the end user, supporter, member, whoever it was, and the platform almost.
mm, mm,
And then actually it became that last step change has then been actually interact with us as an
yeah,
organization, not just
yeah,
with our assets,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that's interesting, yeah, to hear you describe it that way, because that makes sense actually when you think about it, isn't it? Because that's
mm,
what was happening in our everyday lives. Therefore, that's what we expect in our work lives, right?
yeah,
And
yeah,
in
yeah,
our,
yeah,
in our attachment to the calls, and
yeah,
we want to talk about the good things we're doing. Yeah.
mhm,
As a supporter, as a supporter of a charity, whatever, you want to not just be, not just be
yeah.
on online. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean,
Um,
it's things like, just think of a few tangible examples. You mentioned supporters. It's things like, so this is obviously in the charity space, where
sure.
previously you would have a very you would have a sort of a curated, you might, have a curated list of case studies, testimonials, whatever, success stories, so and so did this fundraiser, they did this, they did that. And that was, and more that started moving towards a model where actually people set up their own fundraisers, and they are featured based on what the community thinks, and people can go in and see those successes, and they can create one that looks like that. So everything's just a bit more fluid, a bit more interactive, and it's less curated by the overarching organization. And actually the task becomes, how do we create a space and start a dialogue with our users such that, one, it can be continued, but two, it can actually grow and develop and become dialogue between supporters, between volunteers, between fundraisers, between whoever it might be. And that's a real challenge, but it's something that you sort of see emerging, and it's something that I help quite often at the sort of the beginning stages of, because you can't go from not doing that at all in your history to suddenly having a bustling hub of activity that supports itself and all the users interact. That doesn't happen overnight. It takes real strategic investment in time and money to sort of seed what needs to be seeded, so that those kinds of things start to emerge.
Yeah, and it really is a disruptive model, isn't it? Because, like you say, prior, in the few years before, whatever, digital used as a way to get your support, get your message out to your supporters. But then you bring them down to the challenge event, and that's where they do the networking and the interaction between themselves. What you had to do was to bring them into an online space, like you say, where they could have that same, because it's the encouragement, it's the peer motivation, it's all of that stuff, isn't it? Which is what the whole third sector community is all about. You come together around common cause, and you want to share it.
Yeah, and because of that drive and that need, it has prompted different sort of tools and platforms to pop up, where spaces are literally visualized, and there are sort of more there are always collaborative platforms around, but there used to be, back in the day, it was like, I want my members to speak to each other. I want a forum, and we have to say to clients,
discussion board.
You can't just make a forum and expect people to talk to each other. It doesn't work like that, and nowadays you get more and more tools that make it easier for people to be comfortable interacting, starting conversations, continuing them in a digital space, that previously was something that the magic only sort of really happened offline. So it's been great to see, and it's been a really interesting last sort of 2.5 years or so.
It must have been. And interesting, I kind of loop back to almost one of my earlier questions, but something you said there, which I think is a really positive aspect of the change, and the change you're helping to drive, which is, it sounds to me like people there's always a temptation to come to you and say, this is what I need from you. Whereas now they kind of, and I think there's probably a piece where they've got more confidence in digital being able to deliver for them because of what they had to go through. And if I've heard you correctly, people are more likely now to come to you and say, this is our challenge. How can you help us solve it? As opposed to, this is almost like, don't tell you the solution anymore. They tell you the problem. That's a good thing, right?
It is a really good thing. I think it's a good thing for an organization like us, because we are we're problem solvers. It's as simple as that. We don't like overly prescriptive specifications. Obviously, if someone's gone out and they've done their research, and they, because sometimes charities they'll choose their research partner, and they'll have this, and they'll have their strategy, and they'll have this all put together, and then they'll be looking for an implementation partner. But obviously, all that thinking has happened. So sometimes that happens, but quite often, as I said, clients will come to us with a need, sometimes even an idea. Sometimes you're talking not quite back of a fag packet, but single sheet of A4. I really think this could work, and we've had clients come to us with that, and we often work with them to obviously flesh that out, and then ultimately hopefully deliver it, but also to apply for funding. So we work with our clients. We had some that applied and were successful for the National Lottery Tech for Good grant.
Oh wow!
And they had an idea, said, actually, we've been trying to do this for ages. We know there's something in there. We know the demand for something of this shape, some kind of sort of facilitation platform is there, but we've never been able to quite specify it. And actually, we want to make this happen. And so we can work with clients like that to produce a funding bid to put some meat on the bones, turn it into something a little bit more tangible, that then results in a project, that then results in something build, and then ultimately plugs the gap that they were looking to plug, but they weren't quite sure what shape it was.
Yeah, well, that's great, isn't it? Because that's when they're really, leveraging, benefiting from your experience. Like you say, you've been working in the sector for years in this space across brand and digital, so they can, I guess, you can help them kind of actually put that coherent case together.
Yeah.
Like you say, turn their idea into something that is viable enough.
Yeah.
The proposition is viable enough that they can get the funding for it. That's kind of where you've got them to, isn't it, Rob?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and we've done that a couple of times. I think the whole, how much do you specify something before you approach an agency partner, it very much depends on the nature of the relationship that you want from a partner, whether you want sort of a more traditional supplier client relationship, which is more of the specify everything up front and then hand it over for delivery, or whether you're really looking for a partnership to take on a challenge as a shared endeavor, and your success is intertwined, so you're both working together towards a common cause. And sometimes we get clients who think they want the former, so they have something well specified, and we call ourselves a challenging friend. We're always honest, sometimes to the point of shooting ourselves in the foot to say, actually, we're not right for you. If you want to actually do it like this, it's not right. If you want my advice, then it's this, or maybe you should think about doing that. And sometimes clients, it makes them stop and think, and they think, well, actually, that's interesting you mentioned that, because I had that gut feeling all along. Or we've invested, because there's the sort of the sunk cost fallacy plays into this a lot, where you spent a lot of time either internally, and there's with an external party, and there's been a lot of pain. Perhaps you've had to drag people through a process, and you built this specification, and then suddenly someone comes along and says, I know this isn't what you want to hear, but I'm not sure this is a good use of money. Have you considered this, that, and the other? So it can be a really interesting sort of initial calls that I have with clients, to talk about stuff like this. But ultimately, we're here to give the best advice we can based on the information that we've got, kind of regardless about whether we're working with a client or not.
And I think that kind of honest appraisal of what they've come to you with is, it is good all round. I'm sure, as you say, there may be occasions where then a client has said, okay, you're not for us, but probably you're equally saying, you won't, to the client, you won't get the best out of us. If you want to be that prescriptive, and just give us this, just build it for us. Don't tell us whether it's right, just build it. That's not a good project for you to get involved in, really, is it?
No, and there are agencies out there that would be a dream project for them. So it's horses for courses, really. So we're always interested in that partnership and that match between what someone's looking for in an agency and what we can provide, because ultimately it's not going to be a comfortable relationship if there's a mismatch there, whichever way around it is. It's just not, you're not going to get the best result. So
yeah. And I can tell just from the conversation we've been having today, the passion you've got for actually being able to, it's about adding value, isn't it? Like you say, again, if you just build what they've asked you to build, then in the nicest sense, lots of people can queue up and do that. But you want for you to feel successful, I can see, for you to feel successful, you want to know that you've added something to that. You brought more to the party.
It's the sort of the architect rather than the builder kind of, and we obviously we work with our clients, so they're the subject matter experts, they're the experts in their space, and we try and get all the information that we need from them, and just guide and support and work with them to create something that really delivers against what they're trying to do. And it is, you can't do it without a partnership. I can't talk to a client however many times, get all the information, and then go from start to finish and produce the best thing that hits the mark. It's so collaborative all the way through the project.
It's got to be, isn't it? And it's got to be, you've got to build the trust first, obviously, to get to that. But I think at that point where your client partner is then trusting, basically trusting you to say, this is the tool, or these
Mhm.
are the range of tools that you want to be
Yeah.
using. We talked earlier, didn't we? Like before we actually kind of started recording about, should we talk about digital experience? Should we talk about design thinking? Should we talk about personalization? And it's like,
Yeah.
actually, that doesn't make sense to talk about it as topic, does it? Just let's
Yeah.
talk about the
Yeah.
world that you operate in.
Yeah, and those
And
sort of different approaches, those different techniques, they're more and less appropriate to different projects. And I think if I was to say there's been a sort of one direction of travel fairly consistently since I started in my sort of current role, which I've probably been in for, I don't know, 7 years or something like that. So it's a while. There's been an increased willingness, sort of year on year, to forge an initial trusting relationship based on an overall sense of what needs to be achieved,
yeah,
an end goal, and then work together towards that solution. Because I think the further back, I think, going back in time, it got more, it was more and more common to have a, no, it needs to be this, and it needs to do that, and it needs to do that. And of course, there's still a healthy dollop of that, because, sometimes you just know, well, of course it's going to need to do this, because otherwise it
yeah,
wouldn't be a viable, system if it didn't do that. So you still have that, but it's more and more a case of, I'm looking for, a trust-based relationship with an agency who is going to be in my corner, giving me really good advice. And obviously who's got the people in the room, or they outsource it, different models,
yeah.
to deliver what we need to get delivered. So, which is really nice, because that's how we've always worked. So I think we're probably, we're working with more clients better than we ever have done before, because actually the sector has moved more towards how we've always sort of sought to do things,
Okay,
in the first place, which was actually, I mean, our so IE Brand and IE Digital are our trading names of IE Design Consultancy, which is our company name, registered company name. And the
okay.
word consultancy is in there, which is really important, because that is actually fundamentally who we are. We don't take specs and build things, and we don't just do artwork and design things based on
Yeah,
guidelines. We consult. That's foundational to what we do.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, and I think the point you made earlier, actually, that or the analogy of you're an architect, not a builder. I think that's
Mhm.
absolutely spot on, isn't it?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
like you say, yeah, that's the consultancy arm. So no,
Hmm.
fantastic.
Yeah.
I guess probably I'm conscious of time and stuff, so just kind of
Mm.
move us forward a little bit. I guess the other topic we were going to talk a little bit about was kind of upcoming trends. I know it's kind of a question that's always out there. What's next? What's next? Everyone wants to know. But what sort of
Yeah.
stuff, trends do you see in the sector around,
Hmm.
around digital platforms, I guess?
Yeah. So, I mean, and we've already spoken about it. And the blanket term for it is user experience. So
Okay.
it continues to be a trend that at the moment it shows no signs of slowing down. Mainly because it makes complete sense, and has always
Yeah.
made complete sense. So things like design thinking, are just, it's a different way of, it's a different design, approach to UX. Fundamentally, it's still, you're thinking about user experience. That's what you're prioritizing. It's
Okay.
user-centric design. You're saying, who are my users? What do they need? What situations are they in? What problems are they trying to solve? What questions have they got that we can answer? How can we build something that works for our users? And
Okay.
design thinking is just, a way of, it's an approach which, it tends to, I mean, the idea is that it will, lead to sort of more innovative ways of thinking about and doing things, so more creative solutions, because it starts with this empathy piece where you're looking to really put yourself in your users' shoes. But all of
Okay.
them are, they're all based on a fundamental understanding about users, and then saying, well, okay, well, how do we define something that works for them, and then how do we then iterate on that? So you show it to them, see what they think. Does it work? No. Go back, do something new, change something, they come back
Yeah.
and say, so it's this constant sort of iterative process, which has been around for a long time. It's nothing new. But design thinking is just a sort of a new spin, and a new sort of a slightly different focus on how to do that. So
Okay.
UX will remain, as far as I'm concerned,
Yeah.
it will remain sort of the most important aspect, of digital design, going forward. So that's the sort of the headline, if you like. But then there are lots of things that sit beneath that, things like personalization,
Okay.
things like machine learning, chatbots, big data, all of these kinds of things, that actually they're all parts of designing a user experience. Yeah. So
Yeah.
yeah, personalization is just a catch-all way of saying we gather data, and based on the data we've got, we do intelligent things that make it look like or actually tailored to who you are or the segment that we have put you in. So, we all know the classic Amazon, you bought this, people
Therefore,
who bought that
yeah.
also bought, and so that's the base level kind of thing. So personalization is a big deal. But we're in a really interesting situation at the moment, because, as I said before, sort of users, they expect more. Yeah. So
Mhm.
people want convenience. In the developed world, everything is all about getting more and more convenient. How
More
much more
quickly
quickly can I
and
do it?
yeah.
How much less time can I spend doing something? But actually, there's been, data protection and people's personal data has really, really come into focus in recent years, and more so than ever before. People are concerned, and they don't want to give out their personal data. But of course, you can't create a personalized experience
If you don't.
without capturing people's personal data. I mean, if you do, it's going to be a very, surface level. It's
Yeah,
not going to
yeah.
be
It's just
that really deep.
generalization, isn't
Oh,
it?
this thing knows me. So there's a real tension between those two things, between users not wanting to hand over their data, and if they do, wanting to know exactly how it's being stored, how it's being used, where it's going, all of those kinds of things, and users also wanting a highly personalized experience so that they can, discover products, services, things that they didn't realize were there that are really valuable to them or that they really like.
Yeah.
All of those kinds of things. And the key to that, is making sure that whatever you build, whatever you design, that makes use of personalization, delivers enough value that the user is willing. It's a principle of fair exchange. Effectively, it's like, I'm going to do these things for you, but in order to do that, I need this from you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah.
and every single time a user is presented with a field in a form or whatever it is, there is for some users, it's, they're a bit more free and loose with their I accept the terms and conditions. Other users, exercise a bit more scrutiny over that
Mhm.
stuff. But the trend is definitely towards more scrutiny. And yeah, you just need
Yeah,
to
it's
earn your
almost
keep. Basically,
yeah,
you need to
yeah.
earn your keep, either as a mobile app, you need to earn that real estate on the phone, as saving the data on a website, you need to earn the fact that they say, yeah, I'm going to accept all cookies. I'm not going to go in and say, I don't want this one, I don't want that one, I don't want that one.
I think that's
Yeah.
it, isn't it? Because like you say, there's that kind of conflict between don't profile me, yeah, but I only want really relevant,
Yeah.
tailored information, yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
think you've hit the nail on the head, haven't you? If you're then going to capture that information, you almost have to play it back. So if I'm the
Yeah.
one saying don't profile me, but I'm then seeing you've taken a
Mm.
little bit of information and now you're only showing me the music I like, the calls I'm interested in, whatever it may be, I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah, I
Yeah.
can live with that, yeah, because
Yeah.
I'm getting the
Yeah.
playback, I'm getting the benefit,
Yeah.
yeah,
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 exactly. And
interesting.
that is, that's a known thing, obviously. And people are, organizations, I'd say, less so in the charity sector, as is almost always the case. It's led by the commercial sector, and the big shopping brands, big travel companies, these kinds of people, big sort of multi-faceted companies like Virgin, when you've got your media and your
Yeah.
insurance and your all the rest of it. They are leading the way with these kinds of things, and they're starting to put things in place that say, that you're seeing this because of that. So
Yeah, they're
the
telling you, aren't they?
context, yeah. So that you can better understand, because there's this sort of this, people have a tendency to freak out
Yep.
when you see something and you're like, how does, like, I was just talking about that, with Fred, why is this suddenly appeared in my feed? And actually, the answer is almost always not, and I can't, obviously, we don't know for sure. It's not you're being recorded, everywhere you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
It is actually, there's a really good reason, because your profile is linked to Fred's profile, because you spend time together and interact with one another, and he's looked at this and he's just had a conversation with you about that, and so now it's appearing on your feed. So actually,
Ties together.
there's a very good reason why it's appearing, and it's very clever. But it's because it's clever and you don't know how it's done it, that people have a knee-jerk reaction to say, like, I'm being spied on and I don't like this,
Yeah.
and I'm going to turn off all of my tracking. So So it's transparency. We just need to make sure we're being transparent with users, and that when they give us something, they know what they are getting in return.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's interesting that the way you've described that as well. But I think it's also, and I think it is also a good reflection of a maturity in the sector or in digital, where 5 years ago it was all about capture as much information as possible. 10 years ago, just capture. It's like, well, okay, but you're going to use it, right? No, there's just too much data. I can't use it all. So actually, if you follow that train of thought, the digital platforms have to start reducing the amount they capture to be able to play it back, and that's a good thing, right? And again, the GDPR principle around.
I was going to say, I was going back a while, but GDPR was obviously the beginning of this. I mean, not quite the beginning, but it certainly put a spotlight on it. So actually,
kind of crystallized
you must only take and store the information that you are going to use, and the user must be aware of the express purpose for which you are using it, and explicitly say, I'm good, that's fine. So it really shone a spotlight on it, which is great, because I'm a firm believer in everyone's personal data being their own, and what was happening before that. And I mean, let's face it still happens. We still find like, how have I ended up on this? Certainly, I think at the start of the pandemic, everyone found out just how many companies still had their data, because everyone sent out the ubiquitous pandemic can we help you with anything email, and it was like, I've how who are you, how have you got my data? So it still happens, but it's much better than it ever used to be.
Fantastic. And actually, sorry, just rounding out on the trend thing, it's actually a really encouraging answer you've given, which is that UX is still the foundation piece, actually, because it's so tempting, isn't it? Or probably so scary, I think, for a lot of our clients to think you've got to keep chasing the next trend. What you're actually saying is that when people are talking about user-centered design thinking, etc., there are aspects of it. There are new ways of approaching it, but ultimately it's all about UX, which means continue to invest in that, because it's not going away. It's going to underpin what you want to do.
And you get the right technology partner, and they will do the heavy lifting in terms of, I've heard all this stuff about NFTs, non-fungible tokens, and what about the blockchain, and what about this? And it's like, well, actually, it's only relevant if it's relevant for your users, because you don't jump on a sort of a gimmicky bandwagon and say, great news, when we're doing NFTs now, or we only expect, if a building society whose demographic was mostly sort of older generation, you wouldn't expect them to suddenly only start accepting deposits in Bitcoin and Ethereum. It does, because you need to do what's best for your users. So that is the foundation of it. And it might be that actually you decide, like some charities have, most notably I think it's Save the Children, that they are going to accept donations in cryptocurrency. I think it's Bitcoin and Ethereum. And they're doing something with NFTs as well, so non-fungible tokens. So they are so donations of artwork and auctions of artwork. So they are dipping their toes into that area, tentatively, because it's a volatile space to be putting your feet in, particularly at the moment. But they are saying, okay, well, some of our users, this will resonate with them, and actually this is something that we can do that will engage with them, relatively low risk, that can deliver some benefit. It's all about understanding your users.
Absolutely. There you go. There's a nutshell for you. It is about that, isn't it? And actually being prepared to demonstrate that you are, to showcase that you are. But hey, listen, it's been fantastic talking to you today. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, and you.
Thanks for giving up your time to come on the podcast today.
Most welcome.
I could happily carry on for another hour, but I appreciate we've all got things to do. But
it's been really interesting to chat, and it's rare that, because obviously we are, we're an agency, we're busy, fortunate enough to be very busy at the moment. So lots on, and it's nice to sit down and have a chat about something that isn't a project, and it isn't going live next week, or whatever. It's nice to just have a chat about general stuff going on, and share some ideas. So it's been good.
Brilliant. Thank you. We'll do it again, and maybe next time we'll do it for real over a coffee or something.
I'd like that. Cool.
Fantastic. Thanks a lot, Ed.
All right, no problem.
See you now.
Take care. Bye.